Good morning, y'all. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. Welcome to the Winners Lounge. As always, I am Justin Michael, and we are talking about a historically rare rivalry road win for CSU. They pulled out the 21-13 victory over Air Force. First win over the Falcons at the Academy since 2002, only the fourth time they've done it in my entire lifetime. The second win there this century, which is just insane. But this has CSU in a spot where they can potentially make a little bit of noise in the Mountain West, control their own destiny. We'll talk about all of that over the game. We will talk about the standouts. I'll talk about the moment of the game, the player of the game, all the stuff you guys are used to. Shout out to everybody rocking with us on YouTube. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up, I certainly would appreciate it. Good morning to everybody in Ram Nation. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I mean, we have not seen CSU win a rivalry game in front of the fans since 2015. You beat Wyoming in 2020, but it felt so weird in an empty stadium. You know, I was there from a media side, obviously, but I just remember seeing the players holding the trophy and not getting to, you know, have the supporters cheering them on. And it just felt so weird. But this one was much needed for CSU. Like I said, very much historically rare, have just not done well in the Springs. Even really good teams have gone down to that place and found ways to lose. It's been a house of horrors for the Rams over the years. They had 9 straight losses to Air Force in Colorado Springs, 2-11 over the last 13 trips. Just not a place where CSU has had a lot of success. And although there is some stuff that the Rams certainly need to clean up for the second straight week, I would say this should have been a blowout. And instead, you know, it was a tight game in the end. You give up 13 points in that fourth quarter, ends up closing the gap. You have to sweat it out a little bit. They've got to find a way to eliminate some of these self-inflicted wounds that continue to hold them back. A couple of really untimely turnovers. We're going to talk about that while the tone of this show is most certainly going to be positive, because this is just the type of win that the Rams have not had very frequently over the last 20 years. I would say both of these games are just the type of matchups that the Rams have found ways to drop. But I also understand that, you know, this very easily could have been like a 35-0 win, and instead it ends up being a 1-score game. Obviously, those turnovers could have proved to be fatal. They didn't in the end, which was great. You know, the defense found a way to solidify a solid performance by getting back-to-back stops. To close that one, you get the late interception. You get a turnover on downs as the game expires there. So big shout out to the defense. We're obviously going to break all that down. But I just, if you can't enjoy a win like this, what is the point? This is a team that has had your number now for the better part of 2 decades. They have really beaten up on you. Good Rams teams, they've lost to Air Force. Bad Rams teams, they've lost to Air Force. To find a way to win this one and put yourself above 500 for the first time in 7 years, it's an encouraging sign. And while there are still some things they've got to clean up, they still have, you know, it's 20 straight games with a turnover longest streak in the FBS, and I think the second longest is like 14 or 16. So it's not a perfect product. It's far from it. But this team is playing really hard. You've got to commend the effort they've given. And, you know, they're 3-1 over their last 4, with the only loss being a double overtime loss to a Power 4 team on the road. I know Oregon State has now lost back-to-back weeks, which doesn't help the argument for CSU. But that's a tough team, and that was a tough game. And ultimately, it was a game that CSU should have won. You could very easily be sitting here at 5-2 right now. Instead, you're 4-3. But you've got a really favorable schedule to close out the schedule. You know, you play one team with a winning record, and it's Fresno State, who's sitting there 1 game above 500. That's not to say that it's just going to be a cakewalk. I mean, Nevada, they obviously look a hell of a lot tougher than anybody would have anticipated. New Mexico, despite the struggles they have defensively, they've put up 50 points 3 straight weeks. They are balling offensively. That's going to be a tough one. And hopefully, it's a sellout crowd for homecoming in Fort Collins. I know that tickets are already limited, but you're in a spot where you can really make some noise here down the stretch. And it's an exciting position to be in. And this is the type of win that has eluded CSU for far too long. So you've got to enjoy it. You've got to be able to enjoy these types of wins. As Mark Ryan says here in the Toyota chat last year, similar type of game turned into a blowout loss at Utah State. That's a great point. Last year you go up 17-0 in Logan. You're feeling great. The tide turns. You're never able to stop the bleeding. You end up losing by double digits. It was brutal. On top of that, you do get the back-to-back stops late, which was really encouraging because obviously this team has blown some heartbreaking games, over the last couple of years. They are a handful of moments away from having, reached a bowl game last year, being like an 8-win team. Instead, you end up being a 5-win team who lost in just an excruciating way at Hawaii to miss bowl eligibility. They're finding ways to grind out wins. Now, do they need to clean some things up? Without a doubt. And like I said, we're going to break all that down. Well, it's mostly going to be positive. I'm not also going to ignore, what's right in front of us, which is, they still turn the ball over too much. They still have a frustrating amount of pre-snap issues. You got to delay a game at the beginning of a drive. I mean, snapping the ball at the 2-minute warning and not letting the clock run down. That's an error that you can't have at this stage. And that's, again, the type of mistake that, although it did not kill you in this game, could have been brutal in another one. But first win in the spring since 2002 is something to celebrate. I'm looking forward to breaking all this down. Shout out to everybody in the Toyota chat rocking with me. I'll get to as many questions and comments as I can. I really appreciate all of you getting up nice and early. It's a lot of fun to break down a Rams rivalry win. It has been far too long. I think back to 2014, especially that loss. You had an opportunity to play your way into the Mountain West Championship game. It's a 10-win season. You're rolling, under McElwain. I individually, I worked for the team at that time. I went out to Kansas to see some family for Thanksgiving. We all drove. A caravan of us, like 12 of us, drove from Western Kansas to the Springs that morning to get to that game. Ends up being just a heartbreaking loss. And so many times over the years, like the Rams have been so close, but they just haven't been able to pull it out. 2016, they lost by 3 points as well. That was a shootout type game. 2018 was a 1-score game. Like they've knocked on the door a bunch of times, but they've never been able to pull it out. And I know that Air Force stinks. I get it. But they always play hard. They are well coached. I have so much respect for Troy Calhoun and everything that he's built in that program. And obviously they don't quit. 2 weeks in a row, they've really fought back into a game after going down double digits. That's a testament to those guys. And they're never going to give up. They're in the freaking Air Force Academy. But to pull this out, to find a way to get it done was big. I love the airplane celebrations as well, as it's pointed out in the Toyota chat. We're going to keep this rolling. I'm going to get into some takeaways here in just a second. Key stats, turning point, all that stuff. But right now, the Rams' future is bright. And, when your future is as bright as the Rams, you might need to rock some Shady Rays. Shady Rays, an awesome independent sunglasses company, but they make a world-class product that's rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. They've got hundreds of options to choose from, so whatever kind of style you're looking for, Shady Rays has got it. I've got 3 different pairs now, and I use them everywhere. I wear them in the pool. I wear them, when you're roughhousing with the dog, walking around. They're really durable, and it's just nice knowing that if I were to lose them, if I were to break them, every single pair is backed by lost and broken replacements. Shady Rays has your back, unlike anybody else out there. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. All you got to do is go to shadyrays.com, and when you do, enter that code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. I also want to talk to you guys about the official vehicle of DNVR, a proud partner of CSU Athletics. You know, I am talking about Toyota. For generations, trucks have been a part of Toyota's DNA. They built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. You get the versatility of being able to drive these around the city. You know, you don't lose the smooth component there, but they're tough enough and they're built to last, obviously, in those four-wheel drive scenarios, whether that's weather created, whether you're off-roading out on the western slope, something like that. There's a Toyota that's just right for you. Check out the 2024 Tacoma. Those things are sweet. The Land Cruiser is also back, very iconic. They offer 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce hybrid truck. Not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs, like I said, they take command on the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides in SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics, the official vehicle of DNVR. Okay, keep this party rolling. Get into some takeaways here. We'll highlight some individuals. I'll get to your questions and comments and all that fun stuff. But starting out of the gate, you know, you receive the ball, go straight down the field. You're feeling good. 6 plays, 72 yards to get down the field. You have the big run from Avery Morrow. He has a 50-yard scamper to set them up, had a 15-yard run as well on his first touch. You're thinking, all right, Air Force, they have struggled on the ground or to stop the ground game all year long. You're setting that tone right off the bat. Probably could have had a turnover. BFN got away with one bad ball on that first drive, but you're moving it. You get down to the 1 yard line. You have an opportunity to really punch him in the face right out of the gate. And Avery Morrow has a really unfortunate fumble at the 1 yard line. You can't have it. Really frustrating. Second week in a row, he's had a fumble. As good as he has been, as productive as he has been, that's definitely something that he needs to figure out. As a team, fumbles have been too prevalent of an issue for the Rams this season, and they've played a factor in some of these games being closer than they should have been. And obviously, it's backbreaking to have that type of turnover. And then, obviously in the fourth quarter, you have the fumble from Armani Winfield, which is disappointing as well. Both of those guys have been highly electric. They have been very important weapons for this offense, especially in these last couple of wins. But those turnovers were big moments, and they could have been backbreaking. They could have resulted in games where you thoroughly outplayed the opponent, ending up being a heartbreaking loss. I'm really glad it wasn't, obviously, but it was frustrating, despite being the clear better team for the vast majority of this night, that right at the beginning of the game, right at the end of the game, when you're setting the tone and when you're trying to close it out, you have turnovers that really end up impacting you. As Taylor says, the mob is carrying the offense. The offensive line is playing really well. We're going to give them a helmet sticker when we get into that segment. I felt like this game was won in the trenches on both sides of the ball, really. I can't remember the last time the Rams held Air Force under 200 yards rushing. It's funny, you give up like 170 against Air Force. You're like, man, what a great day on the ground. Only 170 yards. But that's what they do. I mean, they go for 300 plus on you easily. And I just thought the defense was so solid in this one. Offensively, you start really well, aside from the fumble. I mean, like, you're moving the ball well. The fumble ends up being a brutally timed turnover, but the defense responds by getting a stop. Kind of sluggish start offensively for both teams after that first drive. Next 3 drives for CSU combined for 76 total yards. So you have 73 on that first drive. The next 3 drives combined, total only 76 yards. All of them end in punts. 7 punts, 2 fumbles on the night, so not a lot of consistency offensively, but they did put together 3 straight scoring drives between the second quarter and the third quarter at one point. With how well the defense played, that ended up being enough to get it done. You had some timely moments there, which was encouraging. Another week where I could say you played complimentary football. I feel like the you get the turnover from Gabe Kirschke, and what a night from Gabe Kirschke. I probably should have highlighted him by now, or 15 minutes in. I don't know how I'm just now getting to Gabe Kirschke. He was a monster. He was the player of the game, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. But I felt like they did enough in this one. You found ways to come up with timely plays. You get the turnover in the second quarter, then you immediately respond with the touchdown. Even that first touchdown, after you're kind of sluggish for a couple of drives there, you break out the trick play, and Kobe Johnson, and he can pass, throws the 23-yard touchdown to Vince Brown. His first touchdown of his career was great to see. And really defensively, they just carried CSU in this win. They were great on third down, which was a big factor. They've looked really good the last 2 weeks. They've generated a lot more pressure on the quarterback. Last week, the raw stats, like if you just looked at the score book last week, I don't think you would have recognized how much havoc that CSU created in the backfield for San Jose State. Really had success on early downs, consistently had them in third and long, which was a big factor with why they were able to win there. I would say you had a lot of similar success in this game. Over the last 2 weeks, average third down distance for the opponent's been about 8.5 yards. That's a good spot to be in, especially if you're able to create a little bit of havoc, get after the quarterback, generate some plays that end up going in your way, which was a big reason I felt like CSU was able to get off the field in this one. They tackled well, but they were constantly in the backfield, and the Air Force was trying to throw the ball because they went down 3 scores early. They did a good job of containing the quarterback, pressuring without giving up the big scrambles the other way, which is something that can definitely kill you against Air Force. Just really encouraging stuff, early in downs, and then getting off the field in third down. Air Force had 6 instances of third down and 9+ yards. Didn't convert on any of those. That's something that had kind of hurt CSU in some of those tight losses over the years, not being able to get off the field on third down. They're doing a really good job of getting off the field right now. Third down defense over the last 2 weeks has been awesome. They've gotten 22 stops on 32 opportunities. Did give up 4 of 5 fourth down opportunities for Air Force, so that's frustrating. That's just an element of playing them, though. They do that to everybody, so I'm not gonna dwell on that, especially because you end up getting the stops late when you really need to. You're able to get off the field. A Kirschke pressure leads to a Dom Jones interception. Dylan Phelps had a pick earlier in the game. They were making plays, both those picks on third down too. So again, coming up with timely plays on third down, finding ways to get off the field, which is just not something the Rams had done a ton of over the last couple of years, and even obviously going back further. A lot of the issues that CSU has had, a lot of the losing tendencies have been prevalent now for multiple generations, multiple staffs, and it's one of the biggest responsibilities this staff is tasked with, is basically breaking the team of those losing tendencies. And it's clearly not perfect. You still had the turnovers, you still snap the ball before the 2-minute warning, all that stuff we've already hit on. This very easily could have been a 28+ point victory. Instead, it ends up being a 1-score game. We'll say felt like Air Force had a couple of favorable instances in terms of the officiating. Phantom chop block against Air Force. Are you serious? That's their bread and butter. The other way, they didn't get called for one. I didn't feel like on the rushing touchdown, I didn't feel like the ball crossed the plane. They got a favorable spot on fourth down. Like, there were a couple of things that I felt like CSU had a pretty genuine case to be upset about, but you didn't end up letting it spiral out of control. You were able to battle through adversity, which is such a buzzword and can be a cliche from coaches, but it is a factor. You got to learn how to win ugly before you learn how to win big. And CSU has been in a position where they could have won big over the last couple of weeks. A couple of small things have held them back, but overall, they're very clearly playing good football right now. They're 3-1 over the last month. This thing is going in the right direction. And I feel like more than anything, the biggest difference has been complementary football. And I felt like the turning point of this matchup was in that second quarter. You're able to finally break through. You score on the trick play. Kobe Johnson throws the ball to Vince Brown. But then, Air Force comes out first play. Kirschke forces a fumble. The Rams end up taking advantage of that with the touchdown. And to me, that's just something that CSU was not doing in a lot of these close scores. Like, they would make a play one way, but they wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. You need to see more consistency. I'm not sure we've seen a true dominant 60-minute effort from either side of the ball. We've gotten closer, probably more like a dominant 48, 50-minute effort. Far more good than bad. But that's kind of how they take it to the next level, in my opinion. If you want to play a factor in this Mountain West title race, you start eliminating some of those small mistakes. You start capitalizing. You hit more explosive plays, all that fun stuff. With the way you're running the ball, with the way you're playing defensively right now, you're going to have a really good opportunity to make some noise here down the stretch. And I'm really excited to see the direction of this program. Now they've got to keep it up because they've got a couple of really tough matchups that I don't think anybody thought would be tough coming into the year. You have got to respect Mexico. Jay Norvell and CSU, they're going to be up for that Nevada game, but Nevada's going to be up for the Rams too. They're frisky right now. They've lost some tough games. They're trying to keep their bowl eligibility on the table as well. You're going to fight some really hungry and desperate teams over here down the stretch. But I really like to see this team stepping up, making plays, and it's encouraging to see multiple guys, stepping up and making plays for the Rams. You've had 3 individuals score touchdowns in this game. You had 2 different players throw a touchdown. For the second straight week, you have a 100-yard rusher and a 100-yard receiver. They're starting to figure it out offensively. Yeah, 0 penalties for Air Force in that entire game. As is pointed out by Taylor in the Toyota chat, just asinine. I'm not going to get into a whole officiating rant. They won the game. Which is what matters. But that has been a common tendency in that series over the years. A lot of favorable calls for the Falcons, especially at home. But held Air Force to 173 yards, which is the lowest since I don't know when. I'll go back and verify that. A lot of really good tackling. They did get burned on the screenplay. That was a little bit disappointing. Looked a lot like both of those touchdowns allowed in the UTEP game. Some bad tackling there. But outside of that, the defense was really good. And I thought that the guys in the trenches did a really good job of doing the dirty work and opening up lanes for those defensive backs and for those linebackers to come in and make tackles. To their credit, they did a really good job there. On the perimeter, the DBs especially have tackled well these last couple of weeks, which has been a big factor. Dom Morris, Dom Jones, Dylan Phelps, all these guys, in addition to the Howells and the Blackburns of the world, who are always going to play a factor. Howell led the Rams in tackles in this one, 7 solo stops. He was really, really good. But I just love that the pass rush was really good once the Rams got up big in this one. They pinned their ears back. They played aggressively. I commend Freddie Banks for, not just dropping 8-9 to end the game. The broadcast was kind of ripping him for it. And I was personally like, well, you clearly did not watch the way this team lost some heartbreakers over the last couple of years by trying to play in that soft shell and just kind of letting them dink and dunk all the way up the field. They pressured the quarterback. They went out and made plays, and they trusted their DBs, which is what they need to do. And to the credit of those DBs, they stepped up and made some plays. There are a couple of instances where Air Force missed throws with open guys. Yeah, but that's part of the game. CSU missed some open throws as well. That's part of the game. How do you respond over a 60-minute, game? And I thought overall it was really solid. And the pass rush was good. The tackling was good. Guys were sound in their coverage, and they were coming up and making plays against an offense that really tests your eye discipline, that really tests your fundamentals. And on a night where the Rams really needed to get it done, they did, which is just not something you've been able to say all that frequently over the years. Just a second here, I'm going to give the player of the game. We're going to talk about the moment of the game. We're going to highlight some individuals, and there are a lot of them that we need to shout out. I do real quick, and it is football Sunday, so it's a perfect opportunity to hit them up. I want to talk to you guys about Raising Cane's. On your mark, get set, eat, guys. Racing for delicious chicken finger meals served up fast. Order up chicken tenders, crispy crinkle cut fries. God, that cane sauce is so smooth, a little bit savory. I just got the perfect amount of, I don't know, it's like a little bit sweet, but still savory. It's so good. Get yourself some buttery Texas toast. I like to get a little bit of extra toast, substitute for the coleslaw. Probably not the most healthy decision, but, make yourself a little chicken sandwich there. For cooked order, hand battered chicken fingers, race into Raising Cane's. Turbocharge your chicken fingers. Get them even faster by ordering online at raisingcanes.com or through their mobile app, Raising Cane's Chicken Finger. One love. I also want to talk to you about Empire today. You guys know the drill. Empire is the best around. You get shop at home convenience. You get the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. With Empire today, it's the best place to get new flooring. There's so many copycats out there that frankly, they're pretenders, they're phonies, they're wannabes. They're trying to be Empire, but they can't hang in that league. There's levels to this. They can't touch the quality of service. They can't touch the speed. So what they do is they advertise a bunch of low quality junk that Empire says, nah, we're not even keeping that in our, we're not even offering it. What they omit is just as important as what they offer. They're not trying to overwhelm you with 8 million choices. They're trying to give you the best of the best, the type of flooring that they would put in their own home. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. Also, check out the Empire virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how any flooring will look. You can, snap a picture. Boom. How does this look with my, how does this look with my paint? How does this look with my furniture? All that fun stuff. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can get a $350 discount when they use the promo code DNVR. Restrictions to apply. See empiretoday.com/DNVR for details. All right, let's get to the player of the game, Gabe Kirschke. Wisconsin transfer continues to step up in a major way for the Rams. He has been a rising star. I've highlighted him pretty consistently over the course of the season. Felt like with Newer Gatkuth battling some injuries, time and time again, the guy most generating havoc back there has been Kirschke. Has really found his role at defensive end. As a guy that played in the interior a little bit with Wisconsin. They moved him to outside linebacker. They've had him all over the place. As a pass rusher here, he is really, really making an impact. He had multiple sacks in this one, had a forced fumble, which ultimately led to CSU's second touchdown of the game. And then after putting the offense in position to capitalize and to extend the lead, he assured that the Rams maintained that lead going into the break with a blocked field goal. Dude was all over the place. Late in the game, that Dom Jones interception was the result of Kirschke pressuring the Boucher in the backfield. Dude has been absolutely money. And I had a couple of people tweet this at me last night. So credit to all of you. Similar sentiments. CSU does not win that game without Gabe Kirschke. And it's really great to see a Colorado kid that, went to a bigger program. He was out there, seeking an opportunity in the Big Ten. His dad's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Like, I understand what he was thinking and never really found his footing there, has come to CSU. He has been the most important addition of the offseason. And I don't even think it's that debatable. I'm trying to run through who would even be in contention with him. Like, they've added some important offensive pieces, obviously, like Armani Winfield. It was great. You've got some freshmen that you're really excited about. Post-Mo Camara, we had a lot of questions about who's the guy that when the game's on the line, who is going to, cause hell for the opposing offenses. And right now it's Gabe Kirschke. I think the guys in the interior are doing a really good job as well. And you're seeing those guys on the exterior benefit from that. But Kirschke has been a monster, and he was massive in this. And I think it's such a cool story. A Colorado high school kid comes back home, basically ends up earning a starting role with the Rams. He is a starter now. Started at the beginning of the year because of injuries, but he has really taken, hold of that role. Has by far been CSU's best pass rusher this year. And now that you're starting to see some of these other guys have success, I think it's a really encouraging sign for the direction of this defense. You know, Mukendi Wakalanji, he had a sack and a half and a couple of tackles for loss in this win. Kennedy McDowell has started to flash as a pass rusher. Kenyon Aggers is a guy that's, flashed, throughout the course of the season. And I really especially want to shout out the interior defensive linemen. Cam Baratow and James Mitchell were phenomenal in this game. Prendergrass, all those guys did such a good job of not getting killed up the gut. Because when Air Force can beat you on that fullback dive, it makes getting off the field borderline impossible, because they're just going to gut you for 4 yards a carry. You get them in 3rd and 3, and you're like, oh man, here we go. Boom. They just run you over. They play bully ball. Those guys in the interior did not let that happen, and they really played well in this game. The moment of the game, I think it was Caleb Goodie's 85-yard touchdown reception in the 3rd quarter. Obviously, that score proved to be pretty pivotal in the end. I mean, that ends up being the biggest difference after allowing Air Force to score the 13 points there in the 4th quarter. He has got game-breaking speed. That one-handed catch without breaking stride was so slick. Great ball from Braden, too. I mean, you really needed that play there. You needed something to kind of keep the momentum rolling after a great close to that second half. You get a stop on defense, boom, right away. You basically end up with what proves to be the final nail in the coffin for the Falcons. Although, to their credit, they kept fighting. They made things interesting. I had some success through the air, which I feel like they always do that against CSU. It's just a little bit frustrating. But defensively, you really did a solid job in this one. As Taylor said, as well, how about BFN's punt to the 1? 3rd time he's done that little pooch punt this season. That was money. That was money, and that's a real asset for the Rams of being able to do that. There are times where, especially if you do that with a lot of consistency and they really trust you, it could be like a judgment call type situation. What kind of look are you getting defensively? It's 4th and 2 at midfield, and if we get something favorable, we get the look we want. Maybe we do a little quick snap and we go for it. If not, just drop back and punt it deep. He was really good in this game, and I think that's where we go from here. He had some missed throws. Like, I understand that it wasn't a perfect outing. It almost never is going to be for anybody at this level. But 0 turnovers, managed the game really well. I thought he put CSU in position a couple of times, sustained drives with big throws. There were a couple of drops that weren't his fault. Could have probably allowed him to go over 200 yards if they would have converted on those plays, but 11 of 21 overall, 178 yards. Had the touchdown, pass rating of 139.3. Really solid. I mean, he managed the game, and he did not put CSU in harm's way, which was a really big factor, because you were running the ball with success, and outside of those fumbles, you're able to execute on a couple of really crucial drives there in the 2nd and 3rd quarter, keeping it going. More individuals. I mean, I guess we could say helmet sticker for Caleb Goodie. He obviously had the moment of the game, 103 yards in the win. 2nd straight week, you have a 100-yard rusher and a 100-yard receiver. And now that you don't have Torrey Horton, like it's going to be on him and Winfield, I think, especially to step up. You're hoping that you can get Jordan Ross more in the mix. 2nd straight week, you go over the top to him. So that they're clearly trying to get that freshman in the mix as they establish a little bit more chemistry, as he just gains more experience out there. I think we'll see him hit on a big play here pretty soon. Despite the fumble, I think you've definitely got to give a helmet sticker to Avery Morrow. He is the first CSU running back since Dalen Dawkins in 2017 to record 4 consecutive 100-yard performances. He has been the most consistent producer for this offense this year. Continues to, in my opinion, be the 2nd best running back in the Mountain West behind Ashton Jeanty, which, hey, if you're 2nd best behind that guy, I don't think that's anything that you would hang your head about. That's quite the honor. Kobe Johnson, got to give him a helmet sticker. It was awesome to see Kobe play a factor in this win through the 23-yard touchdown. You could tell he wanted to throw it. I was a little bit worried that he didn't sell that it was a run enough, but the timing was great. It was a great ball. Vince Brown makes a tough catch with the DB draped all over him. Give him a helmet sticker as well. Jalen Dupree, the true freshman, scored a touchdown. He's got some juice. I'd like to see him get more touches, especially if Marshall is dinged up, which it seems like he may be, given his limited touches the last couple of weeks. Helmet sticker for the entire offensive line. We've had multiple people point out in the Toyota chat, the mob, a big reason that the Rams have been able to have some success offensively. I know it's not the flashiest offense in the world, and there's some people that are just never going to be able to wrap their minds around that. But I think they have more versatility with what they're able to run at opponents. I think they're tougher. I think they have better. I think they're able to better dictate the tone of the game. And I'm encouraged. I really am. I want to see some things cleaned up. I'm tired of the pre-snap issues and all that type of stuff. And that's on both BFN, but that's mostly on the staff. That's on Jay. And while I'm not going to harp on it, that does come down to why inherently, while I don't think Norvell is a bad play caller, I think it's challenging to be both the play caller and the guy that's supposed to be managing the entire game. And I think, like snapping the ball before 2 minutes, that's a perfect example of where having your attention diverted so many ways can bite you. Now, they've figured out an offensive identity here, and it's working for them. So I'm not trying to nitpick, but obviously, like that's something that you've got to figure out here. And if you want to be a team that fully reaches its potential, if you want to be a team that pushes for the postseason, contends in the Mountain West this year, and boy, do you have a golden opportunity here served up for you. Like, those are the things that they've got to eliminate, the fumbles, that type of stuff. And if they do, all of a sudden look out, because you play one team with a winning record for the rest of the season. Helmet stickers for the entire offensive and defensive lines. The game was won in the trenches. Helmet stickers for both Dom Jones and Dylan Phelps. Both of them got an interception. Both those guys had really solid springs, and so it's been good to see them stepping up, making some plays. In particular, I feel like Dylan Phelps, Jalen Gardner, will give him as well. Hopefully he's okay. Left the game with a concussion. Felt like he was really flying over the field, making plays. As Rick said, it was good to see multiple receivers getting into the mix with Torrey being out. I was worried there would be too much pressure on Winfield to step up into that number one role. There's still pressure on Winfield for sure to perform with more consistency than what we've seen at this point. But I do think it's really encouraging that Caleb Goodie is breaking out in a major way, because he's a guy that's flashed in practice, going back to the spring, but that doesn't necessarily always translate. But when you have that type of game-breaking athleticism, it only takes one play to impact a game. In 2 weeks in a row, you get an explosive play offensively when the Rams desperately needed it. And again, that's not something you were able to do early on in the season. This team is continuing to show growth. That's not perfect, but it's very clearly going in the right direction. And I think they have a chance to be pretty dangerous here as the season goes on. Finally, I'll give a helmet sticker to Jack Howell. Led the Rams with 7 solo tackles, 8 in the game. But I mean, you could talk about all these guys defensively. Chase Wilson was great. The backers were awesome. You're starting to see some of the young linebackers play more and more reps. Owen Long is seeing the field a ton more. He got called for a PI that was just ridiculous. We're seeing more Drew Rodriguez out there. When you look at those type of guys, the first and second year players on both sides of the ball making plays, I think that's what's one of the strongest selling points for the current state of the program. I understand that the results early on in the year were not what any of us wanted or expected. You would have hoped to have seen the team perform at a higher level. I understand all that. But you're seeing across the board, whether it's Tanner Morley in the offensive line, whether it's Jalen Dupree in the backfield, Caleb Goodie, out wide defensively, the Kirschkes of the world, and then, Drew Rodriguez, all these guys that I've just highlighted. These are all homegrown players. These are guys that you're bringing in and you're developing, and they're starting to make a real difference for you. And you had to plug a lot of holes via the portal the last couple years, and you're still going to use the portal, to plug holes. That's one of the toughest parts for Air Force right now, is when you only have 4 starters coming back and you can't use the portal to bring in anybody. You really got to baptize a lot of young and inexperienced players by fire. And CSU had to do some of that in 2022 due to the amount of players that left, obviously, in the portal. in season, though. This year, you're starting to see the long-term play, which has always been kind of the idea here. This is going to be a program that is built from the ground up, and Norvell's been very open about that. We talked about it on my show multiple times. We're starting to see the fruits of that labor, and that's really encouraging, because that's how you sustain success, and how, like, you don't have a breakout season. Oh, we made a bowl, but then you fall right back to like 4-8 the next year. That's what you want to avoid. You want to get it rolling and continue to build off of the wins. You want to stack them up, both literally, but also, like in the figurative sense, with the direction of your program. Aaron here has a great question in the Toyota chat. Is Jay off the hot seat? Not necessarily. I mean, I look, I expect him back next year, if that's how we want to phrase it. You still have all the same pressure, though, looming. I mean, you still are in your third year. The expectation is still bowl or bust. As encouraging as these last couple weeks have been, I firmly expect the Rams to be in the postseason. You still got to go out and do it. If you have a brutal stretch here to finish the year, and you somehow end up missing the postseason, given the level of competition, like, I think that would be a really bad look optically. But very clearly, this program is competing. They're playing hard. They're going the right direction. I think it makes the most sense to try and lean into this and build off of it. And, we are starting to see this program do things that had not been done very consistently. Like, obviously, he got the first win over Boise State in program history, just snapped a 22-year drought in the Springs. Like, these aren't little things that we should just turn our nose up at. There are still too many issues, and I understand that, and that I do want to see them clean it up. Like, I do. A third-year program with this many veterans, the fact that they've had 20 straight games with the turnover, that's frustrating. Still got to win the border war. I really do think Wyoming is must win. If you make a bowl game, is the season a success? Yes. But if you would lose both major rivalry games at home, that would definitely be a bummer. Like, it would take a lot of, how would you phrase that? It would take a lot of wind out of their sails, for a lack of a better term. But I think it's in a good spot, and I think that his seat is significantly cooler than it was a couple of weeks ago. Aaron says, even though we won, it sure feels like a loss. I guess I'm gonna need some explanation there on how that could be the case. You haven't beat this team in 22 years there. You haven't beat them, period, since 2015. You covered the spread. I mean, by objective measures, this was something that the Rams have not done. Now, could it have been a bigger win? Yeah, like, I think you could have made more of an exclamation point with the way that you did it, and it is a bummer that they still have these little issues that continue to, hold them back. Both of these last two wins could have been blowouts. I just feel like CSU, given the history, we're not really in a position where we can, complain too much about about beating teams that you've not been able to beat, over the years. Like, I'm encouraged. Is it perfect? No. But I think that the direction at the moment is highly encouraging. And I think we're seeing a team that's playing really hard and playing complementary football. And I think they're playing a style, although it's not the flashiest in the world. If you are able to hit on some of these explosive plays, and if you could create, like 2-3 more a game, I think it would be more reassuring for the fans. They've been close, but missed on a couple of these. Like, I think back to the flea flicker. You just missed on a deep shot to Torrey Horton last week. You tried to go deep to J. Ross on this one, just barely missed it. Like, if you can hit on a couple of those, then all of a sudden, like, I do think these wins start turning into, 14+ point wins. Then all of a sudden, everybody's just feeling a lot more confident, because I think the fact that they've let some of these teams hang around has made it a lot more nerve-wracking. Like, that's for sure. We were all sweating at the end, and it wasn't a position where they necessarily needed to be in. They've got to find ways to get out of their own way, especially in some of these tight games, or they've got to stop allowing games to be tighter because they are in their own way. But I think overall, there's a lot more positive than negative at the moment. And it's just been a really long time since we've been able to say that as a program. Take a little breather here, to a couple more of your questions, and then we'll get out of here. Let everybody enjoy this victory Sunday. All right. Taylor wants to know, homecoming going to be a sellout? I believe they were at over 90% tickets sold going into this week. I would assume that if it's not a sellout, it will come very, very close. I would hope that it would be. I think this is going to be a fun game. I think you might get some New Mexico fans that make the trip north too, given the success that they've had. They had a thrilling comeback win over Utah State. They've won a couple of really exciting games over the last couple weeks. They are electric offensively. Given the stakes, I think it should be a sellout. I don't know if at this point I'm confident enough in saying that it definitively will be. I imagine a lot of the CSU diehards already had their homecoming tickets, but also I think this type of win, getting a rivalry win, might be enough to kind of flip some people that were sitting on the fence there. Zig says, still playing the second half not to lose instead of finishing. That being said, happy for the win and looking forward to a possible shootout with New Mexico at Canvas. I don't know if they did play not to lose, though. They had a 3-and-out where they threw the ball 3 straight times on the fourth quarter instead of getting conservative. They let Braden rip it on 3rd and long. Another time tried to get it to Armani Winfield, didn't convert on it. They sent a lot of pressure in that second half. To me, like, we've seen a lot of pretty conservative approaches from the Rams in the Norvell era, and I think back to the loss in Boulder, especially, where it was it was especially frustrating with some of the decisions that were made. In this one, I felt like CSU played to win, but I felt like they also played with the appropriate amount of risk given the way that the game was going. That's just my opinion. But I understand that it was frustrating that the game was closer than it should have been. But that's more of a lack of execution on some untimely turnovers than anything. Kerry Reynolds wants to know, how you feeling about CSU playing in the Mountain West Championship? I am not confident enough just yet to put that type of proclamation out there, to get that bold and say it with any type of genuineness. Like, I really do think that this team is in a good spot. I think it's on the table. But I think, like, some of the things that people are pointing out from a critical standpoint, the turnovers, the inability to really step on a team's throat and win by double digits and kind of allowing them to hang around, that could cost you. Like, we saw them, frankly, lose the Oregon State game from self-inflicted wounds. If you continue to let teams linger more times than not, like, it's going to come back and bite you. So I want to see them kind of clean up some of that type of stuff before I go out and say, yeah, this team's going to make a Mountain West Championship game. But I will say I think they'll be favored in every game but one. I think with what they're doing defensively, with the way that they're running the football, that is a style of play that translates in the second half of the season. When you look at the types of teams that have historically gone on to the Mountain West Championship, yeah, you need to have quality play under center. But more than anything, you've got to be solid in the trenches. You've got to be able to stop the run. And you've got to be able to run the ball. You've got to be able to get off the field on 3rd down. You've got to be able to sustain drives. Those are all things that CSU is doing at the moment. So I think the direction is highly encouraging. And I think the fact that you don't have to play UNLV, you don't have to play Boise State, I think it gives you a really good opportunity. The flip side is if it goes down to tiebreakers, it could come down to some metrics. The Mountain West uses some wonky tiebreakers. If nobody's ranked in the college football playoff ranking, it comes down to like undisclosed metrics. If you remember back, San Jose State got left out of the title game a couple years ago, and then they were kind of frustrated by it. But they're in the mix, and that's not something I don't think anybody would have believed could be possible a month ago. Coming off of that showdown loss, it all felt pretty bleak. It felt like this was going to be a really long season. It felt like, on both sides of the ball, they weren't coming even close to what they could be. And they still have things to clean up. But I think overall, you're seeing a much more complete performance on both sides of the ball. You're seeing, big plays on special teams in back-to-back weeks. Like, that's how you change culture, frankly. Like, that's how you stop losing games, is by those little moments. They have to kind of stack as it goes on. Eric says, time for Ram fans to show up and support this team. Need a good home field advantage for the remaining games. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it be? You got homecoming, you've got Wyoming, the border war. Why would you not show up for that? And you've got potentially senior day with some like Mountain West title implications on the line. Obviously, we've got 4 weeks ahead of that game before we start worrying about that. But I mean, there's a lot that could be at stake in that Utah State game. If you got to work on Black Friday, get those PTO requests in, because it's going to be a lot of fun. You got CSU basketball on Thanksgiving itself, and then Black Friday, you got a basketball game and a massively important game against a Utah State team that, much like Air Force, much like a lot of teams in the Mountain West, have really had the Rams numbers in recent years. These are the type of games where you want to get a little bit of revenge. You weren't able to do it against CU, but right now you're 2-1 against teams from the state of Colorado. You have a chance to go 3-1 against the Front Range. You have an opportunity to, beat Air Force and Wyoming for the first time since 2015. Get a couple of trophies, in the Hall of Champions. I'm excited. I'm excited to be in a spot where we're genuinely relevant, at this stage of the year, and it's not just hoping that they can get like a sneaky backdoor bowl bid, I win in 2 games against some like really bad teams late or something like that. You have an opportunity potentially, if you can win these next 2 games, to have bowl eligibility locked up before you even play the border war. And then, from that point, like you're really cooking with some gas. You're playing the type of games that we have not seen CSU have in so long. Aaron says, I'll explain my previous statement. This year's Air Force team is terrible, and we were a Hail Mary away from losing again. This should have been a convincing win. Yeah, I mean, I would say that overall it was a fairly convincing performance, but as I've, mentioned, it's a couple of small things that continue to plague this team. Now, there are issues that, if they continue to linger, could be really big in the grand scheme of things, because they are going to cost you. They already cost you against Oregon State. But you pulled out a win against a team you haven't beat in almost a decade, in a place you haven't won since 2002. I was 7 years old, guys. I was 7 years old the last time that they won in the Springs. I just don't think we're in a spot as a program, especially considering they covered, which from an objective standpoint would be a convincing win. I just don't know if we're in a spot where, we can turn our noses up at a rivalry win. Like, can we recognize that it's not perfect? Can we be critical of what needs to be improved? Without a doubt. I don't want this to just be everything's great. It's all sunshine. We're all proud to be. We're all so happy all the time, because they do need to clean these things up. And this should have been a bigger win than it was. And so should San Jose State. They both should have been bigger wins than they were. But they weren't wins, period, in the last 10 years. Those were just the types of games that the Rams found ways to lose. Whether they were the better team for most of the night or not, they found ways to lose. Right now, it's a little bit tougher than it needs to be, but they're finding ways to pull it out. They're finding ways to scrap out wins. And in a year where the schedule's favorable, that could be enough, especially if you're running the football with success, not turning the ball over, and you're having more defensive success than you've had probably since the conference slate in 2022. This is probably the best CSU's defense has looked since a couple of those games there late in Norvell's first season, where the defense largely was the only reason that the Rams were even competitive, and probably the biggest reason they avoided going like 2-10 or something, 1-11. I mean, that team had a lack of depth across the board. But this was a big win for CSU, and you got to enjoy it. Now, we'll talk about all the things they need to clean up as the season goes on, and these next 2 weeks are going to be tough. Like, I think both of these games are very realistically losable games, and then you're in a spot again where you got to win some games late to be able to get into the postseason. But you're also in a spot where you can control your own destiny, which is not something that the Rams have been able to say very frequently. When they've had the chances, they have not been able to do that. So we'll see. This is encouraging. You pulled out a win over Air Force. You haven't been able to do that. You won a game against a legitimately good San Jose State team last week. You haven't been able to do that very consistently the last couple of years. But just get to a bowl. We'll complain about the potential bowl destinations when it gets there. I too have seen the Hawaii Bowl prognostications and have cringed. A Christmas Eve bowl in a location where very few people would be able to go would be some pretty classic Ram life. Like, everybody's stoked. Oh, we finally got back. Oh, here's this bowl on a holiday that nobody can go to. I know production at DNVR would be bummed if that was a game, because they'd have to produce my live show. My family would probably be pretty upset after also missing Thanksgiving. But at this point, I'm so desperate to see this team reach the postseason. I would take it. I would take it. I would celebrate it. I would cherish it. I just want to see this team win some rivalry games, and I just want to see them back in the postseason. They took a major step in the right direction in this one. That's all I've got for you guys. I'm losing my voice. It's been a long week. Really looking forward to homecoming weekend. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be in town. Would love to say hi to a bunch of you, especially if you support the show. You guys make all my dreams come true. I would not be able to do any of this without you. Much love, y'all. I am always proud to be. Soak it in. Enjoy this one. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.